Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Sunrise Daily. I'm Chamberlain Uso.
It's not Friday yet. It's Wednesday. 2 days to go. Well, it's a beautiful Wednesday morning, really. I'm Kayode Okikelu.
Yeah, it's a day full of hope. Good morning and welcome to Sunrise Daily on Channels Television. I am Bukola Samuel Wemimo.
Were you insinuating that Chamberlain's greeting was too enthusiastic?
I didn't say anything.
Anyway,
No,
yes,
it was full of hope.
I don't know. Good morning and welcome, Malkwe Yusuf.
What can anyone do without hope in the first place?
Yeah.
Absolutely
without
nothing.
hope. Why do people wake up in the morning? They got hope that they'll make something of the day.
Yeah.
Why did they go to bed at night? Because they hope the next morning they'll be up and running, probably hit the ground running the next day. Why do we vote in the elections? Because we have hope that probably they'll do what they say they'll do. But that part is, always a big question.
And probably hope that the fuel situation will be better. We can
even
get
though
fuel for our cars, for our generators.
Yeah, we've been slammed several times. Yeah, hope is not a strategy.
Yeah.
Nigeria has to have a strategy. You have to have that strategy to deliver and do something moving forward such that you don't find yourself doing the same thing over and over again and expect a different result. I think we have somewhat found ourselves in that scenario. Look at the headlines for 20, 30 years ago, for instance. You see similar things playing out now. Isn't that tantamount to doing the same things? You'll be the judge of that anyway. So speaking of dailies, let's delve right in and see what they reflect this morning. We'll start with the Guardian newspaper. They say, well, a little bit of what the president is saying. Basically, that's a big lead on the front page of The Guardian here today. If you did catch that president's comment, so probably you might be able to see that one. So, the front page of The Guardian, Buhari to Western governments. Nigeria operates own economic model. Okay, what is this economic model? I think I need to be schooled on that. And so I'll be right and not get it wrong. Rules out fuel subsidy removal. Well, if you just simple Google search, you'll see several comments and articles about the president talking about fuel subsidy being a fraud. Associates of his who did serve, with under him at the time say, yes, I agree with the president. Fuel subsidy is a fraud. And now you see rules out fuel subsidy removal. Western countries implement fuel subsidy. Ask Nigeria to remove it. That's a direct quote now from there. That's an interesting one. Defends CBN intervention. Says only its board can sanction Emefiele for alleged infraction. What is this infraction about? Is it delving into politics or attempting to delve into politics?
Or reported to be attempting to delve into politics.
Because I read up so many things and then haven't gone to court to prevent any such thing from going on. So wait, he's a member of the APC, isn't he? By so doing.
Well, I don't understand. I don't know how to respond to that, honestly, because the more you look, the less you see. 1 minute he's in court, and the other minute is not saying much to reporters when asked about his ambition. So. Well,
but these kind of things will have an implication for posterity. So does that then mean in the future you can have somebody who a CBN governor who delves into politics? Is that what should we do? How should we relate to that?
Maybe it was one leg in, one leg out.
Can we afford to have a CBN governor have one leg in, one leg out?
Waiting for a green light from the courts.
Kayode, as a result of being one leg in, one leg out, sensitive and non-sensitive materials can no longer be kept. Kept with the CBN during the governorship election. Yes.
Of that.
So that's one of many, perhaps.
So what kind of precedent is this?
So how do we deal with that? Where does it lead us
to?
I mean, these are just objective questions. We're just wondering, look, what happens? Because even INEC is saying this, so you can imagine what others may think, how some of these things. Don't forget, capital is a coward. It flees when it's threatened, and those kind of threats come in different ways. So both actions and inactions of those who manage or head financial institutions, they have ripple effects on how the markets behave. And so one wonders, there's just so many questions that, one just likes to get answers to, just in case you're asked. Maybe we'll go to different places, they ask you these questions. You don't know what to say because you look to the authorities and say, look, what's the provision of the law on this one? Anyways, proscribe IPOB, that's the next rider. Stop shielding its leaders, President urges Western governments. Whoa. You see? Wait. Let me read that rider again. Proscribe IPOB. Stop shielding its leaders, President urges Western governments. So suggesting that Western governments are, what, shielding IPOB?
Well,
okay.
It is what it is. That's what the president. Quite an interesting interview, really, with was Bloomberg. You know, the text of it. Going through it, he saw some interesting issues raised by the president. One of them, subsidy. Yeah. And it was as though the president was saying, "Well, you've been telling us to remove subsidy. Now you are subsidizing as well. So leave our Nigerian approach to the economy and let it slide," because he said that they wanted to remove subsidy, and I think this government has been on and on about removing subsidy, but then he made the point that when they saw the reality, when they saw that if you pull this thing out, then it will be a major catastrophe, they decided to pull back and continue with it.
What that then suggests is, you know, because before they came into government, they were all about subsidies of fraud. We need to remove subsidy. We don't understand what is going on with this subsidy. And then, you know, they're in 7 years on, almost 8 years saying, we can't go this way.
You know, it's easy to speak from outside.
Yeah.
You can say everything, no, this is not happening right, this is how it should be, and all that. And you get inside there like, wait a minute.
You know, but we had this conversation yesterday. It's okay if subsidy must remain, if it's going to be an adequate blanket covering for everyone. But we heard Petro yesterday, and we heard the other man also yesterday, Ipman. So is it really a blanket covering? Is it covering
which will focus on
all the marketers, independent, major marketers and minor marketers?
Why this is a little more confusing is because this same government, only a couple of years ago, also tried to remove subsidy. Not once, not twice, they tried to remove subsidy. And then now, the president is of this view.
And in fact announced that it was removed only for it to
that's why this is
into the budget somehow.
You know, that's what
you know why it's called the premium motor spirit. You know, spirit. Now you can't say it just comes in.
You don't start this morning.
That's why when you read this kind of comments from the president, you're just like, hold on, wait a minute. What's going on? But well, look at the other rider here. Buhari dumps Amechi, Akpabio, others, sends new ministerial nominees to Senate. So there's a lot to unpack from that, you know, president's interview. So much there, because this interview kind of gives you an inkling into the mindset of the president, what the government may be thinking, the stance. But sometimes if you lean on that, you may be a little confused. So I don't know, many people usually talk about body language. I don't know if there's any such inkling in this.
Quite a lot of body language to interpret, really. We should also know why, you know, he's not wielding any big stick in the direction of the CBN governor.
Well, he said it's a job of the board, essentially. And I recall that conversation came up when there were rumors about his sack and all that. And it was said that the president can't just unilaterally sack the CBN governor. But hey...
Wait. Talking about that, you know, when the country approached the president, many spoke to him about, what's that word again, about restructuring.
All right.
The president said, it is the job of the National Assembly. Now, the president said, it is the job of the CBN board. And many have told us, if the president gives somebody an assignment, he lets you do it because he trusts you implicitly. He doesn't interfere. So, is this a trajectory of the way the president operates?
Or is this the law, perhaps?
You'll be the judge.
If we start the restructuring conversation, trust me, we're not going to leave.
Which is why we're going into the Daily Times newspaper right now. Take a look at the Daily Times. The front page has this one. Why Nigeria has not removed fuel subsidy. Buhari again reiterates that story. Says international trade rigged against food security in Africa. Insists sacking CBN governor not solely within president's power. Nigeria should be free to choose its development model. There you go. So we'll give it a name, the Nigerian economic model. So I just give it a name.
Let's go study that. I'd like to know it.
Oh, goodness. That story, by the way.
Capitalism?
Clearly not. That story on the Supreme Court makes its way to the front page. We need to win ourselves off that conversation quickly. Supreme Court. Yeah, really. Supreme Court hit by economic crunch, unable to meet all demands. CGN replies angry justices. Clearly, big one. We'll definitely be delving into that one for you as well. Let's know the state of our judiciary. Is it judiciary as a whole, or just when it comes to the Supreme Court justices and the rest? More stories. 625,000 passports issued in 5 months. That's coming from a Minister of Interior, Aragbeshala. How has your passport, is it renewal or procurement or the registration process? How has it gone, or how is it going? I hear there's still some sort of racketeering, as they say, going on, and you wonder for how long more.
It will be interesting to see what an investigation into that process would turn out.
Very, very well.
Okay.
Next to that, all kidnapped railway passengers must be brought home alive. Buhari. So he said the kinetic and non-kinetic approach must be used. And I must note that the talk about releasing the children of the terrorists and all that, the statement from the president said that had been sorted. So it looks like, was that request granted? Was it negotiated and all that?
Well, they must be categorical, with what they mean by it has been sorted. Have those children been released? If those children have been released, what about the remaining 50 travelers who are hostages of kidnappers right now?
That's the Daily Times.
Okay, from the Daily Times, we'll go to the Daily Trust newspapers this morning, and it leads with that conflict between the CJN and the Supreme Court justices. It says, how unresolved feud between CJN justices led to public spat. I imagine that would give us a bit more insight into, the origin of the conflict beyond what we're reading about replies and the growls of the Supreme Court justices. Wow. So it'll be interesting for you to pick up a copy of the Daily Trust newspapers this morning. I believe the story is on page 6. Let's take a look at the riders. Lack of accessibility, denial of logistics, responsible sources, unidentified sources there. Your tenure height of decadence. Ouch. That's coming from the justices, yes. Shots fired. That's really ouchy. You're dancing naked in the market. Oh. That's according to the CJN, Mohammed. It's unhealthy for public's confidence in judiciary. Analysts are reacting this morning. Let's look at what's beneath the nameplate. Fuel scarcity worsens as transporters hike fares in Lagos, Abuja, others. Now, fact check. This is an interesting one, and you should read it. Is Nigeria's economy in better shape than in 2015, as claimed by President Buhari? That's one big question for everyone to ponder, to reflect on this morning. I wonder if your answers will be more to the yes or to the no, a very vehement no. Bakba?
Well, I'm going to be looking at the Vanguard for you, and they have this particular story. Look at it. Forests across Nigeria taken over by terrorists. That's attributed to the governor of the state. Says we need global help to fight them. Buhari seeks use of kinetic, non-kinetic means to free kidnapped railway passengers. Senate alerts military over terrorist den in Kwara, Niger State. The story is on page 13 of the paper. The story you've already reviewed on most of the dailies is also on the front page here. Buhari defends Emefiele's economic policies. There's a lot of that story. Page 5 will give you details. You also see more of it on page 11. Designate IPOB as terror group. Buhari urges Western allies. Page 11 has that particular story. They also continue following the trial of Peter Nwachukwu in the court. Alleged homicide. Peter Nwachukwu beats Osinachi with mop stick, calls her thief. Ashawu, that's according to the twin. So that story continues on page 7. NGE, NPAN, NUJ, other stakeholders insist on self-regulatory framework. It's on page 8 of the paper. And your Mr. and Mrs. is also on the front page. I know Fukayede said it's not Friday yet, but hey, it's Wednesday, it's midweek. Mr. is telling Mrs., are you saying that that dress is not new? Don't be an ingrate. Uncle John bought it from New Jersey. And Mrs. says, I know a second-hand dress if I see one. Are you sure there's no place over there called Old Jersey? That's a big question. If you look at the back page, the sports for you, Waffle under 17, Golden Eagles Thrash TIV 3-1 qualify for final. I hope I haven't messed up the names, but that's what the back page has leading for you. Let's leave it there for Vanguard newspapers and Vanguard.
All right, on to Nigerian Tribune next. Subsidy removal untenable. Buhari tells IMF, World Bank, explains why he won't remove Emefiele over presidential aspiration. Says it's the board, as some other daily says. So the board, what say you? Look at the other writer. Blames oil pipeline vandalism on IPOB. Whoa. Okay. FG, I thought IPOB was a recent phenomenon, and the pipeline vandalism has been with us for decades. Okay.
It's a new trend.
So what, did they metamorphose?
Maybe.
I think one and the same in the first place. I think we should ask that more.
Or more importantly, what are we doing to show that we don't have the pipeline vandalism?
Yeah. FG insists on 165 naira petrol pump price, advises against panic buying. What about those who were selling above the stipulated, or this insisted 165 petrol price? What's going to happen to them?
Are they still insisting on 165?
Yeah, FG insists on 165.
Yes.
So why do we do this? You know the reality. People are buying it for 180, 200. Some are even begging to buy for that amount.
To buy it at
we keep saying
180.
insist. Clearly, these people have issues that need to be resolved. You flog a child and expect the child not to cry, and you know what?
And you insist on 165.
And add to that the inadequate
price.
supply from the NNPC.
Oh boy. Oh boy. All those remaining kidnapped railway passengers to be rescued alive. That's from the president. So we imagine that those who's given this order will act swiftly, speedily too, as we like to say. But above this lead story, Electoral Act amendments, Buhari to, I beg your pardon, bill to override Buhari stepped down. Reps set to recommit statutory delegates clause for consideration. Yeah. And then just at the bottom strip, Supreme Court breaks silence on Justice's petition against CJN. Protest letter akin to dancing naked at Market Square. CJN 14 justices to meet today. Ooh, you like to be a fly on the wall of that meeting, don't you? Given all what's going on. Or will it play out the way politics usually plays out? You know, they have this acrimonious build-up to politics, and maybe if they have a certain meeting or convention or special one coming up, and then at the end of the day,
it's an anticlimax.
It's politics. It's just politics. We know what we do, how we do it. Maybe the media too should try that. Don't ask me how. I know the next question is how, right?
I'm definitely going to be asking you after the show.
Well, turn to the back page of Tribune first. Money completes medical advice. So what the movie's got there. So, and then that beat of Falcons also there, saying Falcons is good to go to retain the African title. That's Tribune this morning.
We'll see how that goes. Take a look at leadership next with this lead. It's on voter registration. Stakeholders worried over a January collection date for new PVCs. Have you gotten your PVC? Are you in the process? How has it been going? Or how is it going? Whichever one, you get the point. Says it's too close to 2023 polls. Effective distribution not guaranteed. Catholic Church advocates PVC sensitization at worship centers. I remember that video I saw about one priest telling the congregants that, you know what, you need your PVC to approach the Holy of Holies. I mean, just paraphrasing. Prosecute vote buyers in Ekiti. Peace Committee tells security agencies. So that's the update on the election. It's a big one. Oshun is just a few weeks to go. So we need to get our acts together before the big one, the 2023 election. Now, you see this one, low supply from NNPC depot heightens fuel scarcity. That's an update. May signal end to subsidy regime. Well, the president says otherwise, so I don't think the subsidy is going away anytime soon. We extended it for another 18 months. A couple of other stories on the front page. Machina faults Adamu over Lawan's participation claim. The Yobe primary saga is still on. Episode 5, Season 1. Let's leave it there for leadership.
From leadership, let's flip to Nigeria News Directs this morning, and it leads with that story from the presidency from yesterday. A ministerial appointment. Buhari nominates Ubana Adegoroye, 5 others for Senate's confirmation. See how that goes this morning. I guess it will run smooth sail. And from there, let's go to the top, above the top of the nameplate. It says, why federal government rejected World Bank, IMF economics advice on subsidy removal. I guess that refers to the Bloomberg interview. And then fuel scarcity, depot operators raise concerns over costs as FG insists on regulated price. And there's this one that should concern everyone. That's the last one above the nameplate. Senate alerts military on terrorist enclaves in Kwara, Niger State. We keep talking about lack of intelligence, lack of intelligence. Now, this is in-your-face intelligence. So I hope that, there'll be proactive measures taken, and so that, it doesn't happen when there's an attack and it's all blown up in everyone's face. So this is intelligence that the security operatives should act on. That's the Nigerian News Direct this morning.
Indeed, and let's take a look at New Telegraph for you. They have this one. Kaduna train abduction, secure release of captives. Buhari orders security agencies. Says he'll endorse Tinubu as Nigeria's president. Names Amechi Akpabio, Onu, others replacements. Pages 2 and 3 will give you all of the details. You also see at the bottom there, ASUU, federal government has done nothing to warrant suspension of strike. It's been since February 14. Today is, we're somewhere in June now, June the, let me see, 22nd. That's how many months now? 4 months plus. And, students in tertiary institutions have been at home. What's that to say, apart from the fact that we have to ask questions of ourselves and our country and our leaders as to how seriously we take the issue of education in this country. Page 4 is where you might find the details of what has happened so far, because New Telegraph is keeping tabs on it. CBN 5.92 billion naira worth of loans guaranteed under ACGSF in 2021. Rivers, Guba, Wike, Amechi in another test of might. Pages 9 and 10 will give you details. And look at the bottom there. Electoral Act. Why Rep's motion to override Buhari's assent stalled? Again, terrorists invade Ortom's village, kill 16. United Nations says 4.1 million people risk hunger, death in Northeast. You might want to see how come on pages 2 and 5. This is where the president says that the terrorists are already going extinct. So you wonder what exactly the consequences of our fight have been. Is it that people are still not able to go back to the farms? Why are 4.1 million people still under the risk of hunger and death in the Northeast? And look at this. Osun 2022, INEC recruits core members, people with disabilities as ad hoc staff. Certainly, increasing their strides in trying to ensure that people living with disabilities are included in every form. INEC has been taking the lead on that, and I guess we all can borrow a leaf from there. Federal government to IMF, World Bank, others, fuel subsidy removal untenable. Considers mini grids to tackle power failure. Only CBN board can sanction Emefiele for alleged infraction. Well, we'll have to leave it there for New Telegraph newspapers, hoping that you'll pick it up and get all of the details that you need to get. Let's leave it there for the paper.
Well, yes, we might as well end it today with the review of the dailies. We will be back in a moment, so stay with us.
It's about 40 days since the National Assembly transmitted to the President for assent a bill for an act to amend the Electoral Act 2022, which amended Section 84, subsection 8 to allow statutory delegates to participate in political parties' congresses and conventions. Section 58, subsection 4 of the Constitution provides that the President has 30 days to assent to a bill sent by Parliament or formally communicate his decision to decline assent. Honorable Benny Bakba moves a motion during Tuesday's plenary on the need to override the President, based on the Speaker's advice the previous week when the lawmaker raised a constitutional point of order on the matter. The Deputy Speaker, however, draws his attention to the procedure for overriding the President, and the motion is stepped down.
My guide is only that the procedure followed is not what is expected, and that's not the procedure. That's only that's my guidance.
Mr. Speaker directed exactly what I am doing. So it means there's a miscommunication somewhere, but what you are saying is still in order. We'll follow it and ensure that this is done.
The Speaker wouldn't have asked you to come with a motion because for you to override on any bill, you need two-thirds of members, not two-thirds of members sitting, but two-thirds of members of the National Assembly. So you can't come through motion. And that's why I'm guiding you and then guiding the House. Thank you very much. So motion stepped down by the leave of the House for further legislative action.
Outside the chamber, the House leader and the sponsor of the motion speak on what had just transpired.
By our standing rules and by the procedure, traditional procedure of the House of Representatives, you can only do that by a substantive bill, because this is a legislation, and you cannot overturn any legislative upheavals through the instrumentality of a motion.
The explanation is that the rules and business should bring it in form of a bill. Yes, I expected the chair to direct the rules and business to bring the bill for reconsideration so that we can pass it for a fourth time, which means with two-thirds majority, which means we have actually fulfilled the section 58(5) of the Constitution.
The actions of the House of Representatives is similar to that of the Senate, which had gathered signatures to override the President's veto on the Electoral Act Amendment Bill earlier this year over the inclusion of direct primaries as a compulsory method of primaries for political parties. That plan was eventually jettisoned. Attention will be focused to see if the House will follow through with the override and if it can get the Senate to sign off on it as well. Terry Ikumi, Channels Television News.
And so the bill will step down. So let's get some more perspective as to why, the whys and the wherefores, basically. We'll start from Abuja this time. Mark?
Thank you, Chamberlain. We have with us Honorable Benny Bakba, who is a member of the People's Democratic Party. You're welcome, and I know you're also representing Ethiopia
Federal Constituency.
Yeah, Ethiopia Federal.
Thank you.
You're welcome to Sunrise Daily this morning.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So we heard that, you know, I think you had brought up, was it a motion you brought up last week, you know, a proposal.
A point of order.
A point of order to the House of Representatives talking about the fact that the amendment which was done by the House, the latest amendment which was done by the House with regards to the Electoral Act, which was supposed to have allowed the statutory delegates be able to vote in the primaries, which have now been concluded. But the president refused assent to it. It would seem that time had now lapsed for his response to that, and you brought it to the attention of the House for the president's veto to be overridden. But somehow it would seem that there's been a miscommunication of processes somewhere. Can you bring us up to speed precisely on what transpired from last week to this week?
Thank you. Wednesday last week precisely, I came under a point of order, a constitutional point of order, that's Section 58, reminding the House that on the 11th of May, the Speaker and the leadership convened an emergency session, and that emergency session was actually heeded to by all members. We came and we amended Section 84(8) of the Electoral Act, because there seemed to be some misgiving about not mentioning statutory delegates. Because as it were, it was like the way it was in 2010 version. That now that it has been transmitted to the president on the 12th of May, and it was already 14th as of the day I came up with that point of order, 30 days has lapsed, and the Constitution made provision for us, if we are sure that we have done what is right, and because of the importance of that piece of legislation to the nation, especially this electionary process and time and season, we should activate Section 58(5) of the Constitution so that we can pass it through two-thirds majority, and we no longer need the president's assent. Mr. Speaker advised that I should come in form of a motion on notice so that everybody will be aware, and I did that on Thursday, and yesterday it was listed, it was on notice, and I moved the motion, and I think the only resolution, only prayer that motion talk about is to activate Section 58(5) of the Constitution. And to activate that means that we are saying that let's work in line with Section 58(5). But, you know, in our rule, Order 10, Rule 2, says that the decision of the chair is final, it's not subject to appeal or review. And that was what the Deputy Speaker, who was presiding, said, that we need to come in form of a bill. Actually, my thinking is after the activation of Section 58(5), it is to direct from the chair that the chairman rules and business should list the bill and possibly inform members to be around, because Mr. Speaker said the other day it's not going to be done by voice vote, it's going to be done by our electronic voting system, so that we can be sure that we have the two-thirds majority. One mischief I just want to I'll say it's not really mischief to cure, but something I want Nigerians to know. The truth is, well, the Deputy Speaker is a very fine legislator. He has been one of the person that has actually guided us in a lot of things. Two, he's the chair yesterday, so his decision is final. And three, we are talking about overriding the president, which people think is a big deal. It's not actually a big deal.
No. I'm still not clear as to what precisely transpired yesterday. Yesterday, it would seem that you said you brought it in form of a motion as the Speaker instructed you to, or guided you to. Correct. Last week, and you complied with that. So what precisely was the hiccup which was experienced in the House yesterday?
Well, that is why I refer you to our rule, Order 10, Rule 2. The decision of the chair is final, because as far as I'm concerned, I did what is right. I did.
What did the chair decide? That's the question.
The chair decided that I am supposed to come in form of a bill. I can't come in form of a bill, or I should liaise with the Rules and Business Committee to bring the bill back. That I thought was not my own. The motion is to let the House take the decision so that the chair can direct, or the House can direct the Rules and Business Committee to bring in the bill for reconsideration. But he wanted me to go and liaise with the Rules and Business Committee and order that the motion be stepped down.
Is that normally the process? Is it usually the duty of the person who brings up that sort of motion to liaise with the chairman Rules and Business for the House to be able to take a look at that again? No, it's the chair, because when the House takes any resolution, it's the chair that directs. But this is, but for now, that is what it is. It's in line with our rule. I cannot appeal what he has said. He's the chair, and that the rule says the decision of the chair is final. Okay, so what it means is that the attempt by the House to, or your plea to the House to take a look at this and override the president's veto has suffered a setback yet again.
It's just a setback. It's just a setback. the violation has been done. Mr. President did not communicate to the House. Mr. President did not assent. He did not tell us why he's not assenting. And we still have other staggered elections that are coming up. What we are trying to do is to cure whatever will happen in other elections that are off cycle. The one within the cycle has been done. And the problem in this country is our leadership recruitment process. And if primaries, if it starts from the primaries, I think the onus is on us as lawmakers to ensure that we have an enabling law, an electoral law that can stand the test of time. Yes, no law is carved on stone, but we must try our best as much as possible to get what is right and see where there are lacuna areas to correct from time to time. We can do it. So it has suffered a setback, but I believe what happened yesterday, the onus is now on us to try and reach the chairman committee, it has committee rules and business to do the needful. Then if we are able to garner the 240 that is required, which is normal, I don't see anything wrong in it. And a lot of our members yesterday...
I was just about to ask you about the sentiment amongst your colleagues.
Yes, my colleagues were in the chambers yesterday. A lot of them came actually to see what can be done to this, because Section 4 of the Constitution gives us the powers to make laws. And I don't think it is right at all times. Whatever we do, the executive is either they reject or they bring it back. That is our own. But for this one, this is about election. Election is around the corner. We had to come back from our various constituencies to make sure we do this amendment. After doing it, Mr. President did not just ignore, he traveled outside the country. He left to Dubai, to Spain, and who travels when your country is on fire? And now that has thrown up a lot of challenges. The political parties were afraid. They were scared so that tomorrow there won't be litigation and they say that they don't have candidates. So they have to comply. And that gave the process, the beginning of this process, to people that are hitherto not even known, people that does not understand the working, people that have not been following up. They don't know the pedigree of the people contesting. So money bags took over, and tomorrow Nigerians will cry that we're not getting the best.
Would it have been, I was just about to ask you, because I mean the primaries have since been conducted. In your party, looking at the presidential primaries, I think 774 delegates participated in the presidential primaries. In that of the APC, they had 2,322 delegates participating. Some people felt that the reduced numbers of the delegates also brought some sanity to the process somewhat. And they figured that if this were to stay as the law, that perhaps in the future there will be more attention paid to how delegates emerge rather than placing hope on people that are statutory delegates or super delegates, as the case might be.
Unfortunately, one, the reduced number, how can, I listened to former President Jonathan, where 6 persons have to decide who becomes a candidate, and there are 4 persons contesting. So you can see somebody might be getting just 2 or 3 votes to decide to be the candidate. Does that really reflect the thinking of the people in that constituency? That we should ask.
At what level is that? That's at the...
I think it should be House of Assembly.
House of Assembly?
Yes. I went to the House of Assembly. I had I had about 100 persons that voted in my primaries. So now we're having 6 persons, and somebody's going to go with 2 votes. That definitely does not signify the thinking of everybody, and that will throw up people. And this time, you see the money issue everywhere. So the person with the deepest pocket gets it, and definitely not the deepest knowledge and capacity.
At the level of the presidential, what we saw at the level of the presidential primaries did not quite reflect the level of the problem at that of the primary, how do I describe this now, at the lower levels, let me put it that way, at the grassroots level. It didn't quite reflect that, because if we're to look at, say, 774 voting in the presidential primaries, it doesn't quite show, for instance, that for House of Assembly candidates to emerge, maybe just 6 people are going to, determine that vote.
Not even 6 people, because the winner, you will not look at the global picture. The total population will not be calculated. How many persons actually voted for the winner? Imagine Nigeria, a country of, let's say, 200 million, 210, 220 million persons. And less than 400% decided who should be, or less than 1,000, let's say 1,000% decided who should be.
Don't you think that attention should now focus on who those people are and how attention should now be trained on the political parties at the grassroots level to pay attention to the quality of people who are at that level?
Now, the quality of persons are there. What about the quality of persons that will select the person? There's no way. We have good people, but who are the ones to select them? Are they going to be objective? These are subjective. The primary has thrown up a lot of challenge because persons that are not supposed to, they are there already because they had the money, they were able to pay their way through. Some are very small number of persons they were threatened, and they had to do what they had to do. Because
well, Mr. Speaker, expressed, great reservation when the primaries were concluded and the House of Representatives resumed sitting. He talks about how about 70% of members will not be returning. So some people think that perhaps this is also quite personal for members of the House of Representatives. Is this personal for you?
It would be funny if somebody is saying it's personal. It's not personal. It's about now we are done. Like from my state, we are done. We don't have any election. But there are states that have election off cycle. Are we still going to go back to this same issue? It is not. There are areas where persons with disability voted, and after some time they were removed. They are not supposed to vote. So there's confusion here and there. I believe, and what we believe as a house is, let's get this thing right. That is why we did the amendment of Section 84. And I think Mr. President ought to sign and give Nigerians that peace of mind for people to go into the process with their eyes closed.
Okay, let's take this conversation now to Lagos. I know that they have another guest on standby, and we'll also have questions for you.
Oh, yes, we've got Mr. Oke Ezeala, who is a legal practitioner. First, good morning, and thank you for joining us on the program today. So could you go ahead and tell us, what is your reading of what is going on with this bill?
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. I think at this stage, we have left, the train has left the station. There is nothing urgent about this bill. But I also think that what is important at this stage is if political parties via 2 or 3 persons decide to nominate one person who is unpopular, can the person win an election? The parties should be asking themselves, who is going to win an election for us? Who will have mass appeal? You can decide to get delegates, 20 delegates, and pay them $10,000 or $50,000 or $100,000 as the case may be. But I think we should now look at how do we strengthen INEC, to give vent to the will of the people. Because if these political parties know that if they present anybody, whether you bring all the statutory delegates back, people will be wiped into line. And this is what we should concentrate on. Once we concentrate on that, all these issues of, oh, let me come in, I must be involved, I must be the person to present the candidate, will just go. Because if you lose, just like PDP lost 7 years ago. So next time, every party will say, who do I nominate? Not who pays me higher. If you know somebody pays you higher and they can't appeal to the people because INEC will be up and doing its work. You can't bribe 60 million Nigerians. It's not possible. You can only bribe when you have 50,000 persons, 100,000 persons voting. But once Nigerians come out, you can't bribe them, and parties will be a bit more serious. So I think at this stage, while looking at what the House of the National Assembly is doing or what the House of Representatives is doing, now it is their rules. If I have to speak to what they have done, it is their rules. But what the Constitution said is that they can only override the president. That is, they can only veto the president with 2/3 majority. Now, I do not personally agree with the way the speaker went for it. Maybe saying you should go by new bill. It's not a new bill. There is already a bill. All they need to do is to look at their rules and see, how do we bring back this bill? And I support the people that presented the bill. That is to the extent of the proceedings. But personally, I think there is no need to rush into this bill. They can do that later.
So, Mr. Zala, in other words, you're suggesting that what they have identified as an ill, wherein the number or quality of the people who will sit and ensure that or nominate votes in that particular election it doesn't matter to you as long as whoever comes up, it's then up to Nigerians to decide. Is that your point?
No, I'm not saying it doesn't matter to me. It matters to me. The mistakes have been done. The more, that's why some of us really campaign for direct primaries. When you have direct primaries, you have a lot of people determining who is going to be the flag bearer. But the mistake has been done. Nothing now that is urgent. We should concentrate at this stage. We can come back to correct it. Even if we say we need an indirect primary, we should be able to expand the space, whether statutory or even members. I mean, what stops us from saying 10 members from each local government? If we had 5,000 delegates, it will not be so easy to bribe them with 20 or 30 or 50,000.
When you say it's not urgent, well, they are saying, look, based on our law and the rules here, the president had 30 days within which you are sent to this, and that hasn't happened. Are they supposed to look the other way because they think we're only following up on what the provisions or what the laws provide? So wherein do you then say it's not urgent?
No. One, why I'm saying it's not urgent is that it's not going to impact on the remaining elections before 2023. So if it's not going to impact on that, we shouldn't concentrate and waste our time on what will be for other elections that may as well commence in 2025. You know, that is my own. But what is important is if INEC is going to do its work, if INEC is ready to do its work, we will see what that has landed us to. It's easier. We have, now, yes, we may say we don't have independent candidates, but we have a lot of political parties who will shop for good candidates and will present those good candidates. So when PDP or APC or any major party decides to shut out the people that, because the essence of amendments that the House of Rep is going for is to ensure that there are more inclusive people in nominating a flag bearer. I agree with them that it is important. But the point now is, what should we emphasize on as of today? We can do this after the elections, assuming. So, because there is nothing late. That's the point I'm trying to make. Nothing late now for us to either get into that place or not to get into that place.
It's quite interesting, really, because on the one hand, you have issues with the process of trying to override the president's veto, especially what we saw on the floor of the House yesterday. But for the content of the bill itself, you think there's no point, really. It's okay to just leave it the way it is. But still piggybacking on Chamberlain's question, because, this is a challenge we have. We see time and again pushing those issues to the future. Say, you know what, we still have time. Let's do it sometime eventually. But it is the law, essentially, and it looks like the members of the National Assembly have seen a lacuna in the law. So just again, to be clear, are you saying that we should overlook this, even though it's some sort of lacuna, and just carry on and sort it out, like pushing the evil day forward as it is?
Okay, I am not saying it should be left. The point is that we have a lot of bills that are seeking for attention. The point also is that this bill can be taken care of in 2005, in 2025, or 2024. We can do that. I am thinking that National Assembly should be able to look at the oversight functions on INEC. What is happening now? What has INEC done in terms of collation of aspirants? There are some burning issues in the country today. There are issues of what do we do with aspirants that did not contest election that are coming back to take up the tickets? What do we do with those? Is National Assembly not looking at that area? Is National Assembly not going to pass a resolution and say, INEC do the right thing as contained in the law? So when we say push it, we're not saying, I am not saying push it because it's not important. Like I said, I have my reservations on even what the National Assembly is pushing. They are pushing for to have more statutory delegates inside the system. But I am thinking that if they want to, let them look at it holistically and see, is there something we are going to do to increase the number of delegates as we want to do indirect primaries?
Right.
Is there something we are going to do to compel the political parties to expand the space a bit more? So doing some of the actions may appear to be what you may call people trying to protect their own territory.
Right.
And that's what we should concentrate on. That's what we try to overheat the system on.
Well, let's take this to Honorable Bakba in our Abuja studio. So, Honorable, Mr. Ezela believes that there are more important things begging for the attention of members of the National Assembly. One, ensuring that INEC does its job and does it well. And some will also say that maybe this motivation came about because majority of representatives or members of the National Assembly didn't win their primaries. First, is that the case for you? Did you win your primaries? Are you contesting again?
Well, I did not win my primaries, but that is not the issue. The Constitution has been there. At least I'm a little older than the Constitution, but the Constitution has been there, and the writing of the Constitution need to be followed. The Constitution says 30 days, and Mr. President has not written to us on that issue. And election, if you're saying that election is less important, then I don't think it's right. It's fine for somebody to say that election is less important, because leadership, the whole problem we have starts from leadership. And in our leadership recruitment, if the process starting the leadership recruitment is faulty, then it's like building a very big house in a foundation that is faulty, and definitely it will crash. We should be thinking about how to get leaders that actually listen to Nigerians and give Nigeria what we're asking. We know what it is in the country today. I don't want to bore you by running through that, because it's like a broken record. Everybody, my 2-year-old daughter, my 3-year-old daughter understand what is happening as a country. So we need people that can actually change the narrative. We need people that can make us proud once again as Nigerians. So, and that starts from the leadership recruitment process, and that is the primaries. Now we've got it all wrong in the first phase, but I'm sure we'll have another election before 2023 election. So if there are elections coming, what is wrong in correcting these defects, this mischief, cure it, so that going forward, we can actually be doing primaries that reflect the interest, yearning, and aspiration of Nigerians to get better leaders.
Honorable Bakba, it would seem as if you were taken aback yesterday when the Deputy Speaker referred you to House rules, saying that the route you were taking to initiate the process of overriding was a wrong one. Might I ask that was the Speaker not aware that that route was wrong when he referred you to bring in the motion on notice last week? And as a result, are you sensing political undertones amidst all of this, particularly in the Deputy Speaker's move yesterday?
Well, to say that I was taken aback is an understatement, because I thought that had been settled on Wednesday, and I brought the motion, and it's a motion on notice, which means that the presiding officer must endorse it before it goes into the order paper. And the Deputy Speaker also saw it, and maybe he will have, there are times we have to call ourselves and talk, oh, this one will not work, let's just do it behind. But I was taken aback. But in all, like I told you, according to our order, the rule book, or the 10 Rule 2, the decision of the chair is final. It is not subject to appeal or any review. So I leave it at that.
Well, you didn't answer the part about whether you sense political undertones or not, which brings me to my next question. Why was the Speaker absent from yesterday's proceedings? Because it would seem as if it should be the one to have presided, because last week he was vehement in his condemnation of that aspect of the Electoral Act amendment, which led to most of you not returning to the House. So why was the Speaker absent?
Well, it's a human being. I understand Mr. Speaker has another activity, national activity, official activity yesterday that he was attending to. That's why he didn't come, and that is why we have the Deputy Speaker. I must tell you, they are fine legislators. Both of them, the leadership of the House has been very, very helpful. This is my first tenure in the House, and I must admit that I've learned a lot from them. But they are human too, so I wouldn't take one situation to blame them and just say that there's any political undertone, because this is about the Constitution. Any legislator, any Nigerian, especially people in leadership position, we want to protect our Constitution. So I don't see any political undertone. He has said that the committee on rules and business should be approached. I expected him to actually approach the committee from the chair, which is a direction. It means it's a resolution, and it gives more weight to it. But he has directed me, and I'll do that.
Lastly, are you riding on wishful thinking that this mission to overriding will get anywhere? Because it's the same way the Senate blew hot air about its intention to override the president on the direct primary clause only a few months ago. But eventually, nothing actually came out of it, because it then began to say, the Senate began to say that it had to consult with the House of Representatives. And we all know the end of the story.
Well, thank God we have the bicameral legislation, the House of Representatives, the Senate. We work, and at the point we come together. We're not just doing it. It's the Constitution. It's our rule. We are members of Parliament, and the Constitution gives us power to make laws. And if there is an infraction, and what the Constitution says, we are there to cure whatever it is. And that is what we are doing. We can't twist the Senate if we are able to get the 240 required to override. But see, the truth is this: the Nigerians seem to be looking at this overriding as a big deal. It's normal. It's democracy. It's parliamentary practice. It's the Constitution. It's the rule of law. So I don't see if anybody is thinking that overriding the president seems to be. It's not impeaching the president.
You know, but that's why
it doesn't take anything out of the president.
That's
it's
why
just to tell the president that this thing you ought to have signed, you did not sign, and we are going ahead because we believe we have done our part of the job.
But
and
for
Nigerians
onlookers,
need the act to work.
For those who have been following the National Assembly, they were a bit surprised when you say you were taken aback, because they know that haven't seen this National Assembly, matters such as this one, overriding the president, will not happen, especially when they then saw the Deputy Speaker. They thought, yeah, we knew that this was going to be the case. And they don't see the National Assembly going the whole hog with this one.
Well, this has started. We'll see how it ends. It's not for me. Overriding the president is not an infraction of any sort. It's not confrontational. It does not affect anybody negatively. It's just to say, this law, we believe we have done well with this bill, let it be law. Mr. President, you don't want to sign, we put it there. I want to salute previous members of this House of Representatives and Senate who were able to override President Obasanjo to put the NDDC on board. And today, the NDDC is running. It's an agency that people are talking about. So I don't know why people don't want to write their name in the book of history. Let's do what is right. Let's do what the Constitution says. If anybody is, because of party or because of individual, not wanting to do it, then it's a sad narrative, but I'm sure nobody is thinking about party. They just want procedure. Whatever procedure, we'll get to that procedure, and when we finish all the procedure, we will do what is right.
Have there been any whispers from the executive arm of government so far?
Not to me. None that I'm aware of.
So we've been informed now that the battle is not yet over until it is over. When will you eventually say, okay, this is the farthest I can go, and so no more?
Me as an individual?
Yes, as an individual.
For people that know me, I believe that I am working, whatever I am doing is in line with the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Mm-hmm. It's in line with Section 4 of the Constitution that gave me that right to be a member of, being a member of Parliament. I subscribe to the rules of that Parliament, and I subscribe to abide by the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. I will continue. If it fails because we could not get the two-thirds majority. If it fails, maybe the Senate did not follow suit, but I am sure majority of our members know that this is not an affront of the president, it's not confrontation, it is the Constitution, and there is a mischief that needs to be cured by Section 84(8) of the Electoral Act, and we'll follow suit.
Well, thank you for your time this morning. We'll see how matters eventually pan out at the National Assembly. Honorable Benny Bakba is a member of the PDP and currently represents Ethiopia constituency in Delta State. Thank you once more.
Thank you very much.
Well, we'll take a break now. We'll be back shortly to... oh, yes, indeed. We also had Mr. Chukwuma Eziala, who is a legal practitioner. I nearly forgot that you were there. I'm so sorry about that, Mr. Eziala. Thank you so much for coming on the program.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, we'll take a break at this point, and we'll be back shortly to talk about what is happening in the courts. You've seen that letter written by the justices of the Supreme Court and the response by the CJN. Details in a moment. Please stay with us.
Welcome back. So that controversy concerning the letter circulating from the CJN and 14 Supreme Court justices, which is leading to this disquiet in the Supreme Court. Mr. Monday Obani joins us next to weigh in on that matter. He's the chairman, Speeder, and former second vice president of the NBA. Good morning, and thank you for coming
Chamberlain,
on the
thank
show
you.
today.
Good morning.
Well, taking a look at all of this back and forth, even though the CJN says you're just dancing naked in the public. So for you, did you expect this, that at some point this was always going to break? Because lawyers, we imagine, already knew or had an idea of what was going on. But for several others who didn't, how did you see this letter when it hit the airwaves?
Yeah, it's clearly unprecedented. This is the first time in the history of the Supreme Court, 58 years, for justices of the apex court to openly express their grievances to the knowledge of the entire public. You know, it is shocking, but it was long expected that there is a rot in the system. We have
what was long expected?
I mean, the issue of the rot in the system must one day become a matter of public knowledge so that we can really address it. The administration of justice in Nigeria has suffered.
Is this about general rot in the system or the welfare of the justices of which the CJN is not handling matters, right?
It's all comprehensive. The general rot includes the issue of basic infrastructure, including the issue of their welfare. I mean, when a judge who ought to go on some of these international seminars, you know, that really will brace them up in the 21st century does not have that opportunity. It can be very frustrating. And most of them were complaining of rickety cars. We have judges in this country that have to jump Okada in order to go to work. Huh? Yes. They don't have any car.
Judges?
Yes.
Magistrates?
Yes. Even magistrates, even some judges.
Supreme Court?
No, not Supreme Court. Not to the Supreme Court level. You know, we are talking about the general, rot in the system. It's been there. And it has affected administration of justice. The stakeholders, the litigants, the lawyers, everyone have been suffering, but we kept quiet. You know, I think for the first time, these judges, had to brace up to speak out. Because according to them, all the effort they made to have these issues resolved internally, they couldn't get any solution, and so they have to speak out. So that now I'm sure it's going to be addressed.
You know, in the CJN's response,
yes,
which shocked quite a lot of people, as you said, this is the first time we're seeing this. He said that, well, this was meant to be a personal letter, but it found its way to the public. And looking at the original letter now, which is said to have found its way to public, the justices said, God forbid the day that our internal issues become a matter of national discourse. It will be a catastrophic better imagined, and said your lordship must therefore act before it is too late. So again, I just to reiterate, is this good for the judiciary as a whole that this has finally come out, or does more damage than good?
If you look at the content of that paragraph you just read, and I'm sure this letter was written without any intention of making it public. It was a personal letter that is written to the CJN to address some of the grievances which they have complained over time. But how this private letter found itself in the public domain is something that we cannot, vouch for. But the point is that it has become a public knowledge that we need to discuss it and then find a practical solution to it. There are issues in the judiciary, and that is the truth. The administration of justice has been suffering. I have a case in the Supreme Court since 2013, and we are in 2022. That has no date. So also all over, in Court of Appeal, all over the country, many years. It takes an average of 5 or 6 years for you to get a date.
So this is not peculiar to the tenure of this current CJN. It looks like something that has been on before now.
Yes, but what they said in this letter they wrote is that there has been an improvement in the budgetary allocation, but there has not been a corresponding improvement in their welfare. That even when the budgetary allocation previously was not up to what it is now, they were still enjoying some measure of all those things they complained about. They're now lacking. And this is what makes this particular letter a bit peculiar. You understand me? There has been issue of insufficiency in funding, and we have been saying it, that we need to fund our judiciary if we really want to have an efficient administration of justice. We've been saying it. But in this particular letter, they are saying, well, there has been a slight improvement in budgetary allocation with cash back. So how come those things we are even enjoying when things were not okay, we are not even enjoying it now when there has been an improvement in it? So that is what makes this particular letter a bit peculiar. And I think that is a matter that the CJN should address and ensure that those issues that they have raised are really adequately attended to, especially on issue of going for international seminars, issue of their cars, issue of accommodation. Those who have been appointed how many months ago have not been given accommodation. The CJN in the reply said these things are going to be addressed. So I think that is a matter that should be settled. We shouldn't, we're not going to take side in this issue. We commend the justices for raising the issue, because sometimes what killed this nation is that people will have issues that they keep quiet over it. It's only when they're out of office they begin to complain. No, we should internally address some of these issues that are impeding the progress of this nation and see what we can do to get this country working. No aspect of Nigeria's system is working. And many people who are there will keep quiet. It's only when they get out of the system they now begin to provide solutions. So my take is that we commend this. But we'll be happy that if these issues are addressed, and then the harmonious relationship that has been fostered over time maintained. We don't want a situation where the judicial officers, which is apex corp, we have issue of disharmony. We will affect administration of justice generally, and it's very important.
Mr. Obani,
yes.
58 years is a long time. You said this is the first time it's happening in 58 years.
That's correct.
You know, and these are Supreme Court justices. I believe they're referred to as my lords temporal. You know, are you disappointed really about how this is being handled? You know, the letters of the Supreme Court justices are private, were supposed to be private, but the response of the CJN has not been private, and he has used very strong language. What precedent really is this setting, you know, for the judiciary?
I must tell you that any stakeholder in the legal profession will be sad at the development of this relationship. But if you look at that letter, there was several times they've made effort, you know, to have audience with the CJN, according to them. But eventually that audience was granted sometime in March. And then subsequently a committee was set up to aggregate all their grievances, which they passed over to the CJN. That was in March. We are now in June. And according to them, none of those issues have been actually addressed. That now precipitated the second letter, which ordinarily should be private, but unfortunately it was leaked. Are you following me? Now, I would have, if I'm in the position of the CJN, I wouldn't have responded openly with stronger words too, because it gives the impression that there is disharmony within that apex court. You know, the kind of respect that these judges, you know, attract to themselves, you know, by even the lawyers who appear before them, and then let alone the ordinary litigants, you know. So there are things that can be handled in such a diplomatic manner. But since this has become public knowledge, my own take and the advice of everyone who is a stakeholder is that this matter should be addressed properly and handled in such a manner, because there was a prayer point in that year later that God forbid a time will come where the justices will take a more, what I consider a more adverse, step in redressing this grievance they have just expressed. So what more if the justices now boycott court or carry placards? That would be the worst that can happen to our judicial system. So I think that this opportunity presents a golden one for this issue to be addressed, so that there will be joy and happiness within. Because if they are not happy, there is no way they can dispense justice. And you know the quality of justice, and know that it's an expensive thing. We must get it procured at all costs in a manner that everyone will be very, satisfied. For now, there is disquietness, which is what you rightly pointed out, within the Supreme Court circle.
The narrative, the response from the CJN, just as it's been raised now, when you look at all of what's going on, in the first place, you never would have thought judges need to seek audience more than once or twice before you even get a look in. But now that there's I think the body of benchers set up this peace panel, peace committee, which will be a standing committee, supposed to be headed by the CJN. And then several ASUU will be on that particular team. How do you see this playing out? Because already we have an understanding of the mindset of the CJN, which is response to the latter.
Yes, they are human beings. They are not infallible because they are Supreme Court justices.
Yeah, but from the principle of
yes,
being the judge in your own matter.
Yes.
Should the CJN
No, he will not. No, certainly he will not be the one to preside.
But he heads.
Yeah, he heads the. Yes.
Why
think
head
that
if you not preside?
No, the best thing to do is that when the matter of this peace thing is being discussed, he will ordinarily recuse himself and allow some other person. That is, there must be a deputy that will actually preside over any peace parley.
But the head can always override the deputy.
No, what I'm trying to say is that when this issue is going to be discussed, I expect the CJN to step aside to allow his deputy to preside over the peace parley in order to ensure that he can't be a judge in your matter. This is a matter that there has been a complaint against him by his judges. These are people who are working with him. Most of them have been in the Supreme Court for God knows how many years. So they've passed through many leadership. Of course, you see the complaint that they had been there. And when even fundings were not as much as it is, they have been, getting some of these things they're complaining about. So how come there is an improvement in the budgetary allocation and we're not getting it? So they've been there. They've seen how harmonious relationships have been. So if this issue of peace parley now comes up, I expect the CJN to step aside and allow somebody else to preside in order to arrive at a more harmonious and everlasting peace. Peace that will be everlasting is what we should be looking for at this juncture.
So I'm looking at why there's probably a need for a peace parley.
Yes.
Looking at the CJN's response, it says that, the general public should rest assured that there's no hostility or adverse feelings amongst the justices of the Supreme Court as everyone is going about their normal duties. So, he's saying essentially there's no hostility. So, if there's no hostility, really, is there a need for any peace parley? That's on the one hand.
That's
but
right.
Also, I wonder what more can be done. Because, again, looking at the CJN's letter, he said that the Supreme Court definitely does not exist outside its environment. It is also affected by the economic and socio-political climate prevailing in the country, saying that they have been living in their constitutional responsibility. So I wonder what will get better, because for him, he's saying that we're doing the best we can.
Yeah, issues are joined. For us as lawyers, if you look at the complaint of those justices and look at the response, issues are clearly joined. There is there are variants. Oh, I'm not getting this. Oh, due to economic situation. That's the reason why you're not getting this.
And then they said, but your family, you're enjoying
we are doing our best.
People.
So issues are joined. So it is important that a neutral person look into this complaint and address it and ensure that things are done properly. You understand me? Because if it tells you there is no hostility now, looking at it, we're all adults. There is obvious hostility. So we need to sit down and agree that those basic things they complain about must be given to them. It's important. And the CJN cannot in any way compromise that. He knows it, that these people need to be in the best frame of mind in order to give out their best. So that complaint is there. In fact, they said they are meeting today. The four justices are meeting today, meaning that they want to now, in a concerted manner, articulate even this grievance in a more, ferocious manner. So I think that the best thing is a peace parley that can address this issue. Now the CJN is better he listens and makes sure that this harmonious relationship is actually maintained. It is important, and I'm happy with the way he ended the letter, that everyone is going about it, but we know that things are not normal.
From the look of things, there's no
yes, but I'm saying that things are not normal.
So why are you happy with the way he ended it?
Yeah? No, I'm saying, he's saying that, everyone is going about that.
They're mature people. They have to go about it.
He needs to be diplomatic in his language. Because it's also, language is key. The manner he says it also can exacerbate situation. Are you following me? So that particular landing sentence, shows, that, things will be sorted out. That is very hopeful. We are hopeful that things will be sorted out.
Perhaps you should help us understand, you know, how the CJN is in charge of the welfare of the Supreme Court justices. And I ask this because I want us to set it against the backdrop of, you know, events of a few months ago where judiciary workers went on strike, you know, and the complaint was that the judiciary should be put on the first line charge so that the welfare of judiciary staff can be better taken care of. So help us understand how the CJN is in all of this mix.
He's the administrative head.
Okay.
He's the one in charge. He's the head of the judiciary. I mean, at the apex, you know, so also the CJs are at the you know, at the state level. They are the one that, at the first line charge, the money comes, they disburse and ensure that the issue of welfare of the judges that work with them are taken care of. I follow him. Just there must be a head. Somebody must be in charge of distribution of the resources. So he is clearly in charge.
So if he's culpable here, which has not been determined, we would require an independent auditor, you know, to ascertain some of the allegations that the Supreme Court justices are making.
Let me tell you what transpired. There was this issue, a seminar organized by the Nigerian Bar Association recently, generally to address this issue of administration of justice in Nigeria. Now, during that interface, you know, because stakeholders were involved, including the Attorney General of the Federation, now the issue of funding became a topic. And the issue was, oh, we are funding from the executive side. We are funding you guys. But what we demand is that there is much more needed in terms of transparency. Oh, we are taking a bath. The Attorney General was bold enough to speak, look, there has been an improvement in the issue of budgetary allocation, but what is also lacking is that we need more of transparency now in accountability, in accounting what is given to the judiciary. That was something that was revealing. And in my own contribution during that discussion, I said, I hope we heard the Attorney General clearly. He's saying there has been an improvement now in allocation, but we also need some level of transparency by those who are in charge. So
shouldn't there be a fundamental change in terms of the structure, such that this matter never comes up again?
I think some of them are making a plan to probably set up not only one person now being in charge, but maybe a team of committee that will actually be in charge of disbursement of this budgetary allocation at the state level and federal level. That has been the discussion. It's veering towards that angle. Instead of one person being in charge, let there be a team involving some of the judges, you know, when this allocation comes, how do we allocate it with the issue of basic infrastructure, with the issue of welfare, with the issue that has to do with administration of justice generally. Are you following me? So it's an ongoing conversation. I'm saying the issue of transparency, you know, even in the funding system, and then this insufficiency of funding too, because we also have to, you know, place it before the altar of the executive and legislatures. Look, if you want administration of justice, quality one at that, then we must also improve our funding. We must also make sure that these people are well taken care of. I don't know whether you saw a viral video in one of the states where they were removing pool of water from the court. It just rained, and it was like a swimming pool. People were removing, you know, and it's all over. If you go to even my state, there was a time a magistrate just finished sitting, and then went into the chambers, and they this in the building caving, because of issue of basic infrastructure not being taken care of. So if we want quality administration of justice, then we must pay for it. But not only paying for it, we must also insist on transparency, even the little one that is being released to them. These are the key issues we want to address. Funding increase, but in funding, we must also account for it and ensure that it goes to where it's supposed to go.
Bakba?
Indeed, I mean, one is even a little lost as to where to intervene when 14 Supreme Court justices write to the Chief Justice of Nigeria, who is their colleague. I mean, one would say at that level, they are already colleagues. It's just he's first among equals and takes leadership. And we see how you know, matters are resolved in those kinds of institutions. For instance, in the National Assembly, where, you know, the Senate President is first among equals. In the House of Representatives, the Speaker is first among equals. There is a manner for adjudicating and resolving things. This matter is so weighty. When you take a look, I mean, the words of the Supreme Court justices in their letter, I'm looking at this, says, Your Lordship, with all due respect, this is the peak of the degeneration of the court. It is the height of decadence and clear evidence of the absence of probity and moral rectitude. These are very heavy words coming from an institution where, you know, even if all of the other institutions are failing, I know people have said that, you know, the courts are not immune from what is happening in society. But if people expect any amount of decadence in the courts, not at the level where Supreme Court justices take up the matter with the Chief Justice of Nigeria. Have we ever, I don't think that in how we have thought about the judiciary of the country, we have ever envisaged that this could ever be the situation in the Supreme Court. Did it ever come up at all?
It never occurred to me that we will come to a level where a thing like this is being debated and even discussed openly, maybe even before the television. Knowing fully well how grave, you know, that arm of government is, especially the Supreme Court you have just made reference to. But there comes a time in your life when you stomach some certain things, you know, and at the time you can't stomach it any longer. The sentence you just referred to came about when they made reference to a particular memo that proceeded from the registrar asking that the court should be shut down every day by 4 p.m. Because of issue of diesel. And these are justices that would have taken proceedings in the court and need to retire in their chambers to write rulings and judgment. And you are asking them to leave the Supreme Court by 4. And they said this is the height of degeneration. We cannot allow this to continue. You know, and as I said earlier, they may have sought, you know, private audience or tried to ensure that these grievances are addressed, and probably it wasn't addressed in a manner that is satisfactory, and they felt that this is the right thing to do by writing. And I said earlier, they may have intended this letter to be private, but unfortunately it's leaked. And so those language you mentioned may have been personally meant for the CJ in order for him to really know that things have been addressed. We preside over our family issues, especially as a father. There are times children also can sit down with their mom, and you know, when the father has become too how do I describe it now, unapproachable, and some of his decisions are regarded as being draconian, they can say, Daddy, let's sit down and talk. And when they raise such issue and say, Daddy, Mommy is saying, let's sit down and talk, you have no choice as a head of the family, if you want peace in your home, to sit down and talk and then resolve the issues. And everyone is happy that the issues are addressed. So I think that this time around, I have this belief that there is no way these matters cannot be addressed, and addressed in a satisfactory manner, especially with regards to those issues they have raised. They are very fundamental. I don't have a car. The cars that are bought, maybe refurbished, second-hand, breaks down. You want to send me on a course, I should be able to have a backup assistant that will go with me, because that has been the procedure. I need to have light. I need to have internet for my chambers and in my home. For me to work as a judge of the Supreme Court, I need to have these, fundamental things. I need to have light in order to, write my rulings and proceedings. You don't ask me to leave the Supreme Court by 4 p.m. That is a height of degeneration. I mean, these are issues. And if you look at those issues, there are issues that I think that the CJN will sit down with the fellow justices and address, for the sake of the country, for the sake of administration of justice, and also for the stakeholders generally. That is what I think. And I think after this matter has been raised publicly, that there will not be any such further brouhaha, from now onwards. That's my thinking. And I don't think that we'll come to the level where justices will begin to carry placards or begin to boycott court. That would be the...
Yeah, but should we just leave it at that level? I mean, this was unprecedented.
I agree.
Yes, the Chief Justice has also replied, citing, he's also used pretty strong words, talking about how judges in all climes are to be seen and not heard, and how this is dancing naked in the market.
Yes.
I mean, he's also used those kinds of words. But looking at what we have seen, and there's also a lot of other external factors. There are people who have been trying to snoop around to find out, because of course the Supreme Court justices will not speak to you, judges will not speak to you.
That's right.
So you have to find out from around the courts what precisely could have led to this. And when you begin to hear those kinds of stories, you have to ask whether enough checks and balance have been put in place in the judiciary to ensure this accountability and probity. It's not going to happen by accident. Should we be taking a second look at how our judiciary is set up, with the idea to ensure that there is sufficient check and balance within the judiciary as an institution?
I certainly, share that view. And as I said earlier, the conversation is gearing towards that angle that, yeah, we are talking about insufficiency of funds. Now, when the funds are also released, no matter how little, what do we do in terms of accountability? What do we do in terms of disbursement? Are we putting it in the right place? Are we ensuring equitability, even in the sharing of the resources? So now some of them form a team. They have a team, that looks at that disbursement, not necessarily now the chief judge or the CJN being in charge solely. Because, he can, if he's in charge, issue of likelihood of abuse, will be there. So checks and balances must be made available in the system. And I can assure you.
I hear you when you say that they form a team.
Yes.
Well, some people will say that that is an ad hoc measure, something that might serve in the meantime.
Yes.
But we know, for instance, in the National Assembly, that there is Public Accounts Committee, where the effectiveness of that, committee is, is left for anyone to decide. But it's there. It's a statutory committee set up by the Constitution,
yeah,
which the National Assembly must have. And the way it works is that it's usually chaired by a member in the opposition to the government of the day. The executive arm of government is checked by the legislature oftentimes. Should we be looking at some constitutional checks for the judiciary as well? Maybe also another intervention by another arm of government when such a situation arises?
In fact, there has been suggestion by senior lawyers that get the judges off, in terms of deciding funding and issue of finance. Let a statutory body be created that will be in charge of the money whenever it comes. Because it will be very, very, very wrong and very sad for judges to be accused of corruption. These are people that play the role of God in a society in terms of dispensing justice, and then tomorrow you are now accusing that person of being enmeshed in corruption, especially monetary corruption. So they are saying, look, let there be an administrative body that can deal with this issue of fund, not necessarily the judges, not necessarily the chief judges or the chief CJN. That has been the suggestion by many lawyers. And from the look of things, with this conversation that is ongoing, I think that it will come to that level where a body will be created statutorily for dealing with financing that come from, from the budgetary allocation. Yes.
As you wind down,
yes,
just as you suggested, because some will interpret this as an accusation of maladministration on the part of the CJN. So how this body of benches team that they're setting up now, are they going to provide what? A short-term solution? Because the most that will happen is CJN answers to their request. But in the interest of the country and the judiciary,
yes,
what should specifically be done urgently to ensure this never happens again?
I agree with you. You see, everyone is listening. I'm sure that the members of the House, they're taking note of what is going on presently. If there is any lacuna somewhere in terms of, providing this body that can probably be in charge of the finance of the judiciary, they have to look into it. Issue of transparency has become an issue. As I said earlier, the AG raised it. He said, look, we have improved on our budgetary allocation, but you are not being accountable. You are not being transparent. So try as much as possible, because they ask for account, they are not returning. There is no return even to the members of the House. So issue of accountability now is because, so everyone is listening. The executive is listening. All of us are listening. We who are also involved. As I said earlier, there are many issues we need to talk about judiciary. So, the Supreme Court, we need to make it a regional one. This issue of every matter going to Supreme Court, you have up to 10 years to get a date. It's not something all of us should be very happy about. People are complaining. Litigants are complaining. Now, what they even give priority is only criminal cases. What of the civil case? I'm in court in order to have my matter addressed, my grievance addressed. And you're telling me I have to wait up to 7 years in order for that matter to be disposed of. It's not helping those who believe in judicial system. So there are issues. And the earlier we address it, the better. And I think everyone should be involved, including the press. You guys are doing a lot. Let's get our administration of justice going. It's not running well in the country. And that is the truth.
Very quickly, Sylvan, what's the sentiment within the judiciary? Are they embracing these calls for independent supervision of the funding?
Yes, they have no choice. is issue of law. Let's put a law in place.
All
it
right.
will help them and also save all this set of embarrassment also on the judicial officers. It's very important.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Mondo Bani, Chairman Speedel. We hope Speedel is doing well. And former second vice president of the NBA. We're back in a moment. Don't go away.
Oh, yes, as you've seen in the introduction there, Mr. Festus Osifo joins us now. He's the president of Pengasen. I do not want to go into the name of the full abbreviation there, but it's something at the Petroleum Senior Staff Association of Nigeria. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay,
correct.
so you're welcome to Sunrise Today this morning.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Ma'am.
You had expressed great optimism when the PIB was signed and became an act, and a number of people were they had their fears. I think they even had to postpone the implementation of the PIB as a result of this unanswered question on what was going to happen to subsidy. And here we are again. I think I was taking care of last year. This is June 2022, and we're back to fuel scarcity. Has this come as any surprise to you or your association?
No, not necessarily. You know, in the last 6 months or thereabout, so there have been some distortion in the process. As at when the PIA was passed, there was a clause in the PIA that talks about the deregulation of a downstream sector of the oil and gas industry. But at unions in that sector, and largely the TUC and NLC, we all looked at it, that was it really ripe for us to completely deregulate that sector. So there was now negotiation and discussions back and forth before government came out and said they are not willing to go ahead with deregulation as at that time. You saw the statement that the president the interview the president granted to Bloomberg, I think yesterday or thereabout, yes, where he was saying that subsidy is here to stay for now. He has quite agreed with some of the points that we raised. You know, some of the points that we raised are the fact that if you remove subsidy as at then, there will be, in fact, inflationary pressure. That before you could go ahead to remove subsidy, why don't we focus much more on local production? That when we produce locally, it's going to remove a lot of bottleneck in the system. So today, what is really causing this problem that we have today? They are basically attributable to about 2 or 3 factors. One, you know, as at when NNPC, they were paying about, as in the ex-depot price of this particular product is about 148 naira as at today. So now there is, in that ex-depot price, you have some costs that are built into it. And one of the costs is the bridging cost. You know, NNPC will collect this bridging fund and remit to the then Petroleum Equalization Fund that is now subsumed under the NMD PROA, Nigeria Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority. So they are now the one performing that function today. So now that money at the end of the day...
Have the institutions been renamed? Have they been renamed
yes,
as stipulated by the PIA?
Yes, a chief executive was appointed sometime last year, and as of today, they have been renamed. In fact, they have even done staff delineation. In fact, as of today, there is no longer PROA. As of today, there is no longer PEF. So you now have NMDPROA. So NMDPROA inherited the former PEF, PROA, and the DPRO. They were doing both the upstream and downstream. So the downstream of DPRO has also moved over to NMDPRO with a chief executive and the executive directors all appointed. So they are all functioning as it is today. The same with the upstream commission. they are also functioning as at today. So now that NMD PROA, they are now the one that are administering the bridging fund. So now, at a particular time when they agreed with the truck drivers, so they agreed with them that, okay, the bridging fund is going to be about 10 naira per liter, depending on the destination you are going all over the country. So as at when they agreed, the cost of diesel as at that time was about 250 naira. So it was fashionable. The 10 naira was a bit okay. But today, the cost of diesel is over 700 naira. It has tripled. So the expectation from the tanker drivers is that, okay, the cost of diesel has gone up. So instead of you paying me 10 naira 40 kobo as the case may be, you have to multiply it by 3 and you pay me. So that has been the problem. You know, most of these truck drivers, they are not charity organizations. They are there, they cannot...
They're business people.
Yes, they are business people. They are not there for social enterprise. So at the end of the day, that is the first problem. Then, in terms of supply, as of last night, I checked with my members in PPMC and the requisite institutions. As of today, we have close to 2 billion liters, 2 billion liters of PMS. So the problem is not the stock. We have the stock all over, but these truck drivers, most of them are not willing to lift this product because of the problem I just enumerated. Then one of the issue again is also that today, NNPC is the sole importer of PMS. So they import PMS into the country, and this PMS is brought to the high sea. So they rent some smaller vessels to bunker the PMS and take to the various tank farms or depots.
The daughter boats.
Yes. So with the daughter vessels. So they take them there. So if it is NNPC depot and you are loading from NNPC depot, you are going to pay about 148 naira as the ex-depot price. But some of the PMS are also stored in private depots. So those private depots, as of today, they don't sell to the retailers for 148. So they add some premium to it. And at the end of the day, they sell between 152, 155, 160. In some cases, they sell 162. So because they are also saying that the cost of their operation has also increased. So if they sell in that amount, it will now be difficult for the retailer to go and sell at about 165. Because you cannot buy a product 162, 163, then you also pay some other transportation cost and your cost of operation, and you are being asked to sell 165. So because of that, some of these retailers, they decline to lift these products, they decline to buy these products. That's why you see a lot of petrol stations are closed today because the retailers are not willing. So this is another factor that is contributing to this current problem. If you remember, when Abuja was facing fuel scarcity, in Lagos, it was still okay because it was okay in Lagos because the tanker drivers, they were okay, the truck owners, they were okay to supply within Lagos. But to move outside Lagos, that is where that bridging comes in, and that has been the problem. So the problem is not that we don't have a stock. There is a stock as confirmed by all indices and all my members that we spoke to yesterday. But the supply chain, the distribution, there is problem along that line.
It's quite telling that Lagos and Abuja are the major places that are that have been highlighted. You talked about when Lagos was still having supply, Abuja was already facing scarcity. Some people say it boils down to the fact that those are the major places where petrol is actually sold at 165 naira.
Correct.
Almost all the other places that rarely see any scarcity, and in some places they'll tell you, oh, we still have petrol. It is just not sold at 165 naira. Yeah. In fact, we have never bought for 165 naira. What do you think is the way out now for the federal government, which continues to insist on this?
We must define both the short, medium, and long-term approach. The short-term solution as of today is that, yes, we are into subsidy regime, and the government has accepted fully that we are still going to regulate that particular space and that particular industry. So the first thing, which I know discussions are going on, as at yesterday, we were privy to some of the discussions that are going on between government and the tanker drivers. So now they are about moving the bridging fund from about 10.4 to something about 20 naira. So if they do that, although the tanker drivers are still pushing to add something in addition to that. So if they do that, what is going to happen is that the tanker drivers will start loading. And once they start loading, you are going to have PMS, all over the country. That is for the short term. Then another thing that could be done on the short term is also the fact that the regulatory agencies, in this case, the NMDPRA, they should visit these private depot owners and discuss with them and try to enforce and implement the approved price so that they will not be selling PMS to retailers at a very exorbitantly, that most of these retailers cannot sell at 160. Just as you've alluded to. That's why if you go to Owerri, if you go to the eastern part of Nigeria, you see that they have PMS everywhere. And the reason they have that PMS everywhere is attributable to the fact that they sell above 160. So their margin of profit is quite high. And as a business person, you look at your return on investment. So if you are sure that, okay, if I buy this product at 162, 163 from the private depot owners and I can sell 175 without any encumbrance, then I will go ahead and do. So that is why you have PMS in the eastern part and most other parts of Nigeria outside Abuja and Lagos, because you have the regulators present much more in Abuja and in Lagos. Then that is the short term. But in the longer term, we must do everything possible to boost local production. And that has been the yearnings of a trade union. Mahokwe, it will interest you to know that as we have this world energy crisis today, as brought about by the war in Russia and Ukraine, you could see that the countries that are producing PMS, the countries that are producing diesel, the cost of this product in those countries are much more reduced. Let's take diesel, for example. Diesel today is selling for maybe 750, 800 because diesel is deregulated. So if we sell diesel at about 800 naira in Nigeria, when you convert that, that will give us maybe, say, official exchange rate, that will give us about $2 per liter. If you move it to gallon, it will be about $7.56 per gallon. So now, if you check the cost of diesel in the US, because US produces diesel, if you check, you discover that the cost there is somewhere around about $5.70. If you go, they are the highest producer of diesel or the highest refiner of diesel. If you go to China, you are going to discover that is about $4.88. The same thing with India. But if you go to the UK imports about 45% of their diesel from Russia, from Saudi Arabia, Netherlands, and the US. The cost of diesel in the UK, it's over $9.
So production, in-house production is the way to go. Let me flip this to Lagos now, because I know they have questions for you.
Well, thank you, Mahokwe. Just quickly, we thought that this was what subsidy was meant to resolve, essentially to make up for the operational cost, or at least pay those either retailers or depots the difference, so they can still sell at 165 naira, which is the stipulated price. So who is getting this subsidy? Because clearly the retailers, the people lifting, the transporters and all of that aren't getting this subsidy. So who is getting subsidy right now? Who is subsidy being paid to?
Okay, thank you so much. Very good question. As of today, this is how the subsidy system works. So NNPC, we import the PMS. So the landing cost of PMS as of today ought to be in the neighborhood of between about 400 to about 500 naira. So when NNPC buys at about 400 to 500 naira, at the end of the day, the subsidy, but the amount of money that is declared that they buy, maybe it will be around about 110. So the difference between the amount that NNPC spent in buying the PMS from the refiners to the difference with which, to the amount they are going to sell. That is where that major subsidy goes to. And you remember very well, as at when the subsidy of 4 trillion was discussed, and as at when the subsidy of 4 trillion was agreed on, when the calculation was done, the landing cost as at then was around 300 to 350 naira. It wasn't what it is today, about 400 to 450 naira. So now there is more pressure. If we go by the data we have today, I could tell you that we will not be spending 4 trillion. We may be spending upward of about 4.5 to 5 trillion in subsidy. So the major bulk of that subsidy goes to ameliorate or to cater for the difference between the amount of money that the PMS is bought to the amount of money that NNPC supplies to the retailers. That is where that bulk actually goes to. So when that calculation was done, a lot of variables that we have today wasn't there as at then. Because the cost as at that time was much more reduced. If you remember, when we were budgeting for this subsidy as at then, the cost as at that time was the crude oil price as at that time was less than what it is today. Then there wasn't also a distortion in the world supply. So now, that is why today, they are now about to increase the amount of money that is being given to truck owners. And if you are doing that, you are actually increasing the subsidy basket.
Well, I do not know if they still have more questions, but it'll be interesting to see how quickly do you think that this can easily be resolved? I mean, the 20 naira, we understand that 10 naira was initially approved by the president. Yeah. And it doesn't seem to have solved. We thought that that should have ended what we saw, the scarcity in Abuja, but it looked like they decided to start the protest in Lagos. So how quickly do you think that this can easily be resolved? And do you think that the federal government might be willing to add a little more? Because we do not know just how much more the price of petroleum products are going to increase by.
Yeah, as of today, I'm privy to the fact that discussions are going on. They are currently discussing in order to solve the issues of the trucking. But what will finally solve all these, as we have said, is going to be when we refine our product domestically, it will finally put pay to this. So thank God the Dangote refinery is coming, and thank God as well that NNPC has also bought a stake, about 20% stake in the refinery, and today as well, work is going on in the Port Harcourt refinery. So when all these are done, then we will become self-sufficient. So when we are self-sufficient, at the end of the day, it will put to rest all these lingering issues that have been in the petroleum distribution in the last over 30 years now. Yeah, it will put a pay to it at the end of the day.
Well, we have to thank you very much for your time this morning. We certainly will call on you again if we need further explanation. Well, at least from the perspective of Pengassan. Thank you so much for coming. Mr. Festus Osifo is the president of Pengassan and is speaking to us here in our Abuja studios. We have a few mails from you. Abraham Akionbari says, here in Maiduguri, the product is available, but I have not bought it for less than 200 naira per litre since March. The alternative is to queue in a mega station for days if you insist on buying at 165 naira per litre. As for buying in jerry cans, we have not had electricity in Maiduguri since February 2021. That's over a year. The only way to survive is by solar power for those lucky or buoyant enough to afford it, or generators. How can it be a crime to buy petrol in jerry cans in this case? Big question.
Well, take a look at this next one from Imonica Inayana. Says, as one of the largest oil and gas producer in the world and key member of OPEC, we must fully deregulate in its entirety the downstream sector, not the way NEPA was balkanized and sold to disjointed companies, so that the federating units focus on governance, he says.
And AGK Eze says, to get the best out of your judicial officers, you need to provide them with the most basic requirements, such as accommodation, training, and transportation. They should be shielded from the problems in the country.
Well, Festus says, in order not to allow our society to turn into a jungle, The president and governors must take the welfare of our judges a priority so that they can function effectively. Our judges are invaluable resources and their judicial skills are not readily replaceable.
And Salisu Mohammed says the issue of delegate nomination, NAS must come up with a clear process to appointing delegates and pass into law, which then shall be adopted by all stakeholders. Brown Ugu says the Speaker of the House of Reps seems to always be absent whenever some critical decisions need to be taken. It happened during voting on electronic transmission of results by INEC and now on overriding PMB on electoral laws. Or are these coincidences or deliberate moves? Well, that's over to you, Mr. Speaker. We hope that his spokesperson will give us a response on that. Let's leave it there for your mails and contributions today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Malcolm Yusuf.
It's good to know Nigerians are paying attention to their legislators, knowing when they attend and when they don't attend. That's the way to go. I'm Kayode Okikiolu.
Very good indeed. Why am I not optimistic about the Speaker or his aide answering that question? Thank you for watching. I am Bukola Samuel Wemimo.
Well, remember, we started with hope. So let's hope that all of these things will eventually be attended to. Well, thank you for watching as well. I'm Chamberlain, so I'll see you next time.